Welcome back, everyone. We're back once again working on our book nook kit. So, just to give a recap of what we did last week, we started our Sakura Wine Alley book nook kit by Rolife, and we got through the first major part of the kit itself, which includes most of the decoration for the interior of the book nook kit itself. Um, this felt like a good stopping place because I believe at this point we are at the stage where we are going to start making more of the exterior details like the walls and the interior wall decorations. And so this was a nice stopping place for us to end last week, but we are going to continue tonight and see how far we can get. If we're lucky, we might be able to finish it up tonight. If not, no worries, and we can always continue this later. But yeah, it's definitely been a fun kit to build so far. Lots of nice details, uh, very fun to put together, as with these other kits that we put together by them. So we're going to get started here in just a second. What I'm actually going to do is take this module and move it out of the way, just because we won't actually be needing it for a little while since we will be working on the other parts of the kit itself. Yeah, let's get started. The soundtrack for today's stream is just a little bit different than what we've been listening to. Well, I'd say a little bit different. It's not that different. Um, it's a collection of some of the biggest songs from the Studio Ghibli movies. Some of my favorite movies of all time. Frankly, it's really making me want to go back and watch them again. At this point, I think at this point I've seen pretty much every single Studio Ghibli movie except for My Neighbors the Yamadas and Only Yesterday. I think they're technically the only two. Well, I guess there's also Earwig and the Witch, but I've heard a lot of people say don't talk about that movie. This might not be the right answer. Probably keep it. Hello, hello. I was just talking about our soundtrack for the evening, which happens to be a Studio Ghibli playlist. And you just happened to tune in as we have the song from one of your favorite movies. But it's just a quick recap. We're currently working on the next part of our Wine Alley kit here. These are going to be the walls, the sides of the interior. So Oh, late 90s Japanese anime never change. Grab a Q-tip so I can clean that up really quick. I'm fairly sure this glue dries clear, but I'd like to at least make it at least half decent. There we go. on this part because it doesn't want to fit for some reason. No. Mostly. Good lord. That part did not want to go on at all. Okay. We got another little part done. This is going to be one of the sidewalls, I believe, or at least the details for one of the sidewalls. So, without that, over there with another part. No. Some of these parts got mixed up over there. I just need to make sure which one is which. Okay. Cool. Ooh, okay, so we're actually taking these pieces. So we made this today, and then this is one of the sidewalls. Guess what we're about to do? We're about to attach it. Oh, wow. That is really cool so far. I think for now, this is like one of those, like, we've got this piece completed, so it's about to go just kind of sit while we get the rest of this done. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. Set this over here. Very nice. You got us some yakitori. How cute. I'm not entirely sure how. Oh, I see how. That's my own mistake. Adorable. Really? Super glue time it is, I guess. Hmm. Where's my sandpaper? There we go. Just put this back in here. I might actually also super glue this little bin to the bottom, just that way it doesn't move. Not necessary, but just thinking in the case that like this ever gets jostled around or something. Ooh, Kenshi and Azut. Ita, Anohi, Itatsu, Yore, Chigari, Akini, Ito, God, I was so excited to hear whenever they made the announcement that, well, not the announcement, whenever he released the fact that he was doing the theme song for this movie. Like, it was such a big leap for them to go from strictly, well, I said big leap. Ponyo also had an instrument or a vocal theme song, but this is like the first time they had like a big name J-pop artist to do the soundtrack or do the theme song for it, and I think Kenshi Ineze was a perfect choice for it. I think he knocked the theme song for that movie out of the park. 90% sure that the night that I saw this movie in theaters, I listened to the song on repeat probably no less than 50 times, if not more. It's just so good. I could sing the praises of this movie in so many different ways for so very, very long. Howl's Moving Castle will always have like a special place in my heart and will always be my number one like Studio Ghibli movie. But from a serious perspective, this movie is an insanely close second. Like I would almost be willing to put this as like a tie for first in terms of my favorite Ghibli movie. It is just so utterly phenomenal in every aspect, and the fact that it is the second Ghibli movie ever to win an Oscar, I think, is very well deserved. Speaking of Ghibli movies, the vocals. Oh God, One Morning was there. This movie was good, but my God, was this movie sad. So just sit there and think of I think if you restrict yourself to only watching Hayao Miyazaki Ghibli movies, I feel like you're really doing yourself a disservice. Because yes, while Hayao Miyazaki and the genius that he is just an absolutely phenomenal director, I think the other movies absolutely have their merit as well in their own rights. This movie especially. And Ghibli movies, all of them, are just so phenomenally good at telling stories and also sort of teaching lessons or tackling subjects that movies don't necessarily want to tackle. And this movie is a perfect example of that. My name. Would you cry if I died? Would you remember my face? And Studio Ghibli movies also just have the uncanny ability to just like absolutely just be some of the biggest tearjerkers in the world. And of course, right after that, we have this. Christ. Oh, Kiki's delivery service never change. Oh, God. I think if I had a bucket list celebrity that I would like to meet, aside from like, the stereotypical answers that people like to give, I think my answers would absolutely include Hayao Miyazaki, and if not just Hayao Miyazaki, Joe Hisaishi, because I think Joe Hisaishi's music has played such a monumental role in my taste in music and my career as a musician. As much of it as you can actually call a career, but I digress. He's one of those people that I feel like if I ever got the chance to either like even if I just got to see his music or see him in concert live, I feel like that would be like one of those things that's like I legitimately would remember for the rest of my life. You know, even though Joe has she didn't do the soundtrack for this movie, I think the soundtrack for this movie is also really good in its own right. That's cute. Little yakitori stand. Adorable. Well, if that's any good indication of our progress, we're now working on the other side. think it's really clever that they're hiding this LED. Instead of it being kind of just like hanging out in the open behind something, they've actually given us this little like plastic paper lantern to hide it in. I think that'll be a really neat little feature once we actually get to see it in action. Ooh. So, it actually looks like we might be finished tonight. based on what I'm seeing. So, I was kind of wondering why this whole part here was blank and kind of bare. So I was like, it seems a little weird that they would leave that all blank, and it's because, ladies and gentlemen, we are assembling it to the main base. Oh, I see. So they actually put a little hole right here for us to grab these wires through before we attach it. Nice. All right, this is gonna require some finagling, so bear with me for a second. Oh, obviously it's not like superbly stable, but that looks pretty good so far. Okay, I'll put that aside for a second. But with, my gosh, we are almost done. Mhm. Mhm. Controversial take. I think the very first time that I watched Ponyo, I didn't really care for it. Not that like I didn't like it, but I always had like ranked it like relatively low on my list of like Studio Ghibli movies. But the more I saw it, the more I came to kind of like appreciate it for what it is. It's absolutely in the same vein as like My Neighbor Totoro and the fact that it is like one of the more childish of the movies, but like I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think there's a lot to be gained from that movie. From its soundtrack, from its story, from just like every little thing about it. I think there's I think there's a lot that like is easy to overlook when you just take it at face value. But yeah, speaking of Ponyo, I won't lie. Like, say what you will about her dad. Um, for those of you who have seen the movie but don't like exactly remember, he is he's the guy with like red hair, and he's got like the backpack with like the sprayer on it, and like whenever he goes on land, he has to like spray the land that he's going on with like pure seawater or something. Um, and he's the one who's just like uh very protective of her and like, oh, you can't go to like the human world type stuff. Um, like obviously you're not supposed to like love the guy, but like I like his character design. I think he's a fun character. Oh, the promise of the world. Probably one of my favorite songs in this entire soundtrack. Or this not in the soundtrack, this entire playlist. What a phenomenal song. I've mentioned this to my partner in the fact that I always find it funny that you see people who use the Howl's Moving Castle soundtrack as part of their wedding, and the dance is they always do the dance to Merry Go Round of Life, which is like the stereotypical like Howl's Moving Castle theme song. And like, don't get me wrong, it's a great song, and it is a waltz. Yes, it is a dance, but like, I think this is like the true theme to the entire movie. I think like this is the song that like epitomizes everything about that movie. And if you listen to the lyrics, like this song actually is like what I've spent like a good little chunk of time just like listening to the lyrics and like analyzing them and kind of figuring out what the song is. And like, if you listen to it and you actually like read the lyrics, I think the song is perfect in that it just does such a great job of sort of just describing the journey of the entire movie, like in its point. It's just such a phenomenal song, such a phenomenal movie. I could gush about it for hours. Nothing she's on. uh, you know me. You know how much I love this song. It's just so good. I don't think I could ever say anything bad about the song, even if I wanted to. And as much as I just kind of like almost indirectly said that this song is overrated, which is this is now the merry-go-round of life. There's also like I actually can't really say anything negative about this song either. It is just oh Joe Hisaishi, you just did too damn good of a job at this soundtrack. And if you're listening, did I ever tell you about the story about how I ended up getting a copy of this like this soundtrack from some online friends of mine by reading a Wikipedia article? Okay, you remember that like this was back when like I was like 13 and like my voice just started getting deep and they're just like, "Hey, we want you to read this article on Wikipedia about the moon just so that we can hear your voice." And she gave me the freaking House Moving Castle soundtrack in return for it. It was absolutely like just like a friend thing, but like it was funny. The crazy thing too was like I'm fairly sure this friend group uh that this happened in because there was only like two or three people who actually heard me do it. This friend group that made me do it, I'm fairly sure that like I'm trying to think. Oh, I'm fairly sure that was like the yeah. Um, I'm fairly sure that in that friend group that was like maybe the second time they had ever heard my voice, and that was the reason they were just like in such shock and awe about it. No, my voice was absolutely like the first thing to change when I was growing up. This is H3, right? It is. Cool. I need to show you this movie too sometime. When Marnie was there, I told you before that like there. Well, that's not true. I can't lie. I was about to be like there are very few Ghibli movies that make me cry, and that's not true. I think almost all of them make me cry. I'm an emotional person. I admit that. Um, no. There are a handful of Ghibli movies that, without fail, will make me cry. Without fail, there's a difference. If I'm in the mood, pretty much any of them could make me cry. But no, there are a few of them that, like, no matter what mood I'm in, if I watch them, I will cry. When Marnie was there is one of them that, like, no matter what, will make me cry no matter what. Oh, it's rough, but it's such a good movie. Like, I think if I had to list the movies that, like, without fail will make me cry, when Marnie was there, like 85% chance I'll cry. Like, it's pretty high unless I'm just like really not feeling it. Um, I'm trying to think of what else. What else is there? The Boy and the Heron, honestly, is probably like a 70%. Especially there's that one. I'm not gonna spoil it, but there's that one moment he gets the book, and if you know, you know. That moment almost always does it for me. But uh, so I'd say that one's like a 70%. It just really just depends. But the one movie, the one movie that without fail, 100% of the time, and it's actually the only movie. It is my third favorite Ghibli movie, right behind Howl's Moving Castle and The Boy and the Heron. That I actually do not watch as often as I want to, exclusively because it will 100% of the time make me cry my eyes out. And I'm curious if you remember the name of it, Anna. But it is the one movie that without fail will get me every single time I watch it. If it helps you at all, you have not seen this movie. I have not shown you this movie yet. And this hint won't help you at all, but this is just here's your free fun fact. It is his second most recent movie before The Boy and the Heron. It came out in 2013. Because it was supposed to be his last movie, but then he was just like, nah, fuck it, I can't retire. And then he unretired and made The Boy and the Heron and won an Oscar. uh, I'm fairly sure I know for a fact I've shown you clips. I'm 99% sure I sent you a TikTok of this movie today. Um, The Wind Rises. Yep, 100%. That movie, without fail, 100% success rate of making me cry my like making me bawl my guts out. It is such I have because it is such a beautiful movie and it has such a wholesome little like I say wholesome story even though it like makes me cry, but that movie every movie by Studio Ghibli teaches you something. And you started me on this rant, so I'm gonna go on this rant now. But every single Studio Ghibli movie teaches you something to some degree. So you take we'll take like one of the easier ones I think of. Princess Mononoke is a pretty straightforward one because Princess Mononoke is quite literally man versus nature. So like that one's easy. There's your lesson for Princess Mononoke. Spirited Away. I'm gonna turn this music down a little bit on my side. Spirited Away. maybe a little bit more of a subtle message, but she's obviously like moving to a new she's moving to a new place, and she's all depressed, and she's like, I miss my old fan, or she's like, I miss my old friends, I don't want to move, I don't want to do all this. And I think it's sort of coming to appreciate what you have is the message for Spirited Away. um in its own sort of hilariously weird twisted way. But then you have some movies don't really have too much of a message. Like My Neighbor Totoro, you could probably construe like some kind of hidden meaning behind that movie. Like, oh, here's actually the lesson. But I think at the end of the day, like, not all of them have to tell a straightforward lesson or teach a straightforward lesson. But and perhaps maybe it's not that they portray a lesson per se. Maybe it's just that they portray something. And I think that if My Neighbor Totoro were to portray something, I feel like My Neighbor Totoro portrays like the innocence of childhood. I think is a really great way to put My Neighbor Totoro. Yeah, exactly. It's all about just like it's almost like this whole like like this like imaginary friend type thing, which, you know, whether or not it is actually imaginary or not, take it as you will, your own interpretations. Um, My Neighbor Totoro definitely kind of has that vibe of like, uh, you know, like cherish your childhood, the innocence of childhood, and like it's supposed to evoke that like those memories of just like your summers as a childhood. Um, and it does a really great job at it. But so you've got like Spirited Away and then Princess Mononoke, and Howl's Moving Castle is its own thing about like accepting beauty in all of its forms, whether that's like inner beauty or like physical beauty. But I think like it's obviously a lot about like inner beauty because you have like the whole he falls in love with her despite the fact that like he falls in love with her as a person, and she falls in love with him despite the fact that like he has like his own thing, like, which is one reason why I think like it does a better job than the book does, because the book he's a pompous asshole the entire time and continues to be a pompous asshole. But um I digress. But I think The Wind Rises has two central themes. I think The Wind Rises can be narrowed down to the first of which is chasing your dreams no matter, like the idea of chasing your dreams, because it's about this boy whose whole dream is to become a like basically like an architect for airplanes. I don't know if there's actually a term for it, but like he basically designs airplanes. He looks up to this like really famous Italian engineer who's like made these really beautiful plane designs and stuff. And there's this one little sequence. It's not really a spoiler. It's probably like one of the most iconic moments from the film. But like, he has this dream where he meets sure an aerospace engineer, um, or I guess you could just say an engineer in general. But he ends up meeting in his dream this Italian engineer that he looks up to, and he's like, well, how can I be an engineer if I can't fly planes? Because this dude's basically blind. He's got like really thick glasses and stuff. He's like, how can I design airplanes if I can't fly them? And he basically tells the main character, he's like, do you know how many airplanes I've flown in my lifetime? He's like, not a one. But you've seen like what I was able to do, uh, even still. And that there's also the message of him saying like it's really hard to describe, but he basically just he also kind of emphasizes the idea that airplanes should be designed for like the beauty of like the architecture and of like the design and the engineering that goes behind it, and they shouldn't be used for like machines of war, which that's 100% high on Miyazaki being the like anti-war pacifist that, well, I said pacifist. The, that's him putting like his anti-war theming, and which is not at all uncommon with him. He does it in a lot of his movies, but I digress. Um, you've got that, but I don't think that's the main message in The When Rises. I think if you just said that alone is the message, I think you're missing a much larger core part of it. And I think the much larger core part of it, and this is very apparent if you see most, if anything, about the movie, especially like clips. It's the theme and the idea of unconditional love for someone. And the way that it portrays it throughout the entire movie is phenomenally beautiful, and is, fortunately and unfortunately, like the big reason why that movie is so hard for me to watch, because good lord does it just do a great job of not only portraying that but also just like ripping ripping your heart out because of that theme. But it is just such a beautiful film that I feel like really slipped under the radar, which makes me a little sad that more people don't know it, because I think it deserves all of the attention in the world. This is the main lighting. So I mentioned before that there's like three separate light sources in here. Um, there's the little lantern that's in like the plastic paper lantern. There's this overhead light, and then there's another one that's kind of hidden behind some paper screens. And so at this point, a lot of this is just trying to get like the wiring kind of hidden behind everything. which at this point I think pretty much all of it is hidden. So I'm going to move this down and give you a nice overhead view of this as I finish this up. It's like I said, by golly, we are almost done with this. Oh, Porco Rosso. Don't make fun of me for my verbiage. I'll say by golly if I want to. You can't really see it too well, but I'm trying to get ready to put this acrylic sheet down on this top part. I've sort of mentioned in the past when working on these kits that like I don't really care too much for these little double-sided tape strips, but honestly for the case and purposes of acrylic sheets, I almost kind of prefer this to using glue, only because glue tends to kind of fog it up a little bit. So unfortunately, you're not going to be able to see into it very much longer, but I guess we're putting the lid on. Exciting stuff. Yeah, we are like pretty much almost done with this. Like at this point, the only thing we have left is like the back part. So move this temporarily out of the way so you can see me again. don't like how loosely that just kind of hangs there. Am I supposed to put tape or something here? Do I still have pieces of that? I do. Oh, fun. Battery box secured. Let's see here. All right. Sorry for not really being able to show this part. We're basically mounting the little, there's a little capacitive touch button that goes here on the front. And this is what actually turns it on and off. And it's kind of hidden. And now, I don't mount the dang thing. So we've got the touch button in there now. I think this is the point where we actually start wiring everything up, but before we do that though, we actually have to put the back on. Mirror. All right, let's do. Okay. So now hopefully, let me just lay it on its back while I do this last little bit. I wanted to do is these plants really want to come out easily, so I'm gonna look at super plants to keep them in place. While that does dry, I'm gonna go ahead and one, clean up a little bit, and two, go grab some batteries because I think we're about ready to go ahead and plug this thing in and try that. Yeah, honestly, we're pretty much done. I'm gonna let those flowers dry really quickly. I'm gonna go grab some batteries, and then we're gonna test this bad boy out. What size batteries do these need? There's AAAs? Two AAAs. I should have two AAAs. That'd be spreads better. Okay. We got our AAAs. We're gonna put these flowers in super quickly, put our batteries in, and then we, ladies and gentlemen, are done. Perfect. Yeah, that glue really helped. I don't want to move out too much now. Perfect. They're so kind of them to include a little mini screwdriver too, even though I don't need it. All right. Moment of truth. Let me zoom out a little bit. This is our completed kit. Looks pretty good. Looks pretty nice. Like it a lot. But now, let's do this really quick. Let's see here. Alright, I'm gonna turn all my lights off so we can get a nice view of what this looks like with lights. 3, 2, 1. If I can find the switch. Hang on. Hold down. Aha. There we go. It's a little hard to see. Let's see if I can get it to focus at all on. Might be a little bit too bright. Actually, hang on, let me turn these lights back on and see if that'll help the autofocus. A little bit. But yeah, that's what it looks like lit up. So you have like the overhead directional light, and you have the light at the back shop, and then you also have that little plastic lantern there too. Wonderfully fun little kit. Finally nice to have another book nook on my shelf, especially after the accident of the first one. But yes, very much fun. It's been sitting on my shelf for ages, and now I finally have it put together, so it'll be nice to actually put it on my bookshelf. But yeah, and then you just turn it off by pressing that, and then that's all. If I remember correctly in terms of battery life, these things do actually last quite a while. Like, I think they last like a few days if you just leave them lit all the time. So yeah, a little bit longer stream today than normal, but honestly, completely okay, especially considering, hey, we're completely done. It took us, what, a little over 2 hours last time, it took about 3 hours this time, so about 5 hours for the entire thing. I'd say pretty good. So, as always, thanks for tuning in, thanks for joining along for the journey, and I'll see you guys all next time.